Hey everyone, welcome to At the Root of It. And today we have another friend joining us today, Rolando, and we're going to be talking about growth. So, Rolando, could you maybe just do a quick introduction for our audience to frame this conversation, what your perspective may be as we kind of dive into the topic?
Yeah, so my name is Rolando Argueta, and I am pretty much the first generation to be in the tech industry, to first be the first to ever experience growth in my family. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and kind of share that and let you guys know where I stand with that.
When you think of growth, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it something in your personal life? Is it something in your professional career? Or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, I mean, for me, growth has, ever since I heard that word, has always meant to be successful, to continue to develop yourself to be something like a professional or to climb the ladder to achieve something, right? That's what it means for me. Yeah.
And does it show up at all in a different way based on if it's growth in your personal life or growth in your professional career?
Uh, yeah, I definitely say so. I mean, for me, in my perspective, growing up, growth wasn't something that my parents actually taught me. It was always like working hard, get a job, go to school, and continue to work hard. I never paid attention to the word growth until I started working in tech or finding like a real grown up job. Um, my parents never enforced that growth in me. Maybe they did in a different way, but it wasn't actually the word growth. I didn't really pay attention to that until my managers or my manager started emphasizing the word growth in my career.
And how did your manager present that to you as a concept?
Yeah, definitely in my one-on-one conversations, my manager was always like, "Hey, like, how do you want to develop yourself to continue to grow, or where do you see yourself in the career, and like what growth path do you want to take to get to the next step?" Um, like I've said, this is my first tech job that I've actually had, and a real serious opportunity. Never have I ever imagined that I would be in those shoes. I don't think I would have ever heard those words ever in my life.
You kind of maybe mentioned it briefly that maybe your parents kind of represented it in a different way. Could you expand on that and see maybe how that connected back to growth? It just never was that word specifically.
Yeah, so I came to the United States when I was about 6 years old, and my parents probably presented it to me as like the American dream. And my mom, who was a housekeeper here in America, and my dad, a truck driver, their their life was always about the hustle and the grind. And they would always tell me like, "Hey, like, you know, we want you to do good in school. We want you to finish school. Work hard and work as much as you can and earn your money." That's all I've ever been taught in my life. Um, that's why I see it a little bit different with them. I think that's what growth meant under their breath, their words. But it all changed for me when I started working like a real grown up adult job.
It's interesting because I think it's pretty common too for children of immigrants to be told that specific narrative that growth, success, however you may define it, is essentially y- doing well, going to school, getting the job, or no, earning the money, being stable. And I probably thought that way too for myself for a long time. And it is was also like being at my current role now, like that kind of opened my mind to, oh, there's other things beyond just getting a paycheck. And there's more you can gain, more substance in a role outside of just bringing home that paycheck. Like, what is it bringing to me from a growth perspective that doesn't just have to do with that? It has to do with, how am I growing as a coworker? How am I growing as a leader? How am I growing my technical skill sets, my soft skill sets? So I see a lot of overlap and similarity in terms of growth. Maybe our parents didn't have the access or privilege of it being phrased in such a way, and now it's a little bit more accessible to us as like children growing up now as, children of immigrants and out there in the world figuring out what it's like to work beyond just for the paycheck, but just beyond for survival.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I feel like because they were never taught to learn what's next or like what else they can accomplish in their careers, um, that kind of passes on to their children too. Um, and it's not until they actually start their careers and they start to realize like, oh, there's more that I can do with my role or like my own self or my own development. Like I feel like the word growth is so big, like you can apply it to yourself in different ways. And I definitely wish my parents would have known more about that. Because I feel like I would have done more. I mean, there's still I can do more, right? There's more growth that I can take out of it. But like I think you phrased it really well. The take that they have on you.
Yeah, and I think maybe the modern take on growth too, as you said, it's a big concept, but there's a lot of overlap too with being productive, being successful, like having the endurance. Like, how do you think growth is different than those things? Like, does growth have to mean success? And if you're successful, does that mean you've grown? Like, are those things synonymous, or is it sequential, or are they not related?
And I think they're to me they're definitely related. Like I said, I think you could apply it in many many different ways, right? Um, I just don't know if you have the strength to do it. Like for me, I tend to do it a lot at work, right? Like I always put all my energy because I want to like get better at things and shine in my career. But outside of work, I don't know. It's kind of like I don't want to work outside of work to keep like trying to prove myself with my personality, right? Or my person, like as a person. Um, and that's why I feel like I usually lack on my self development because I'm like, what else do I need to do for myself? Like, what else is there for me? Like, I'm happy, like I'm good where I'm at, but then I go to work and I'm like, oh man, like I want to do everything possible because I want to get a promotion, I want to get a raise, or I want to shine, I want to be the star of the company or the team, right? But then I go back home and I'm like, all right, I don't want to work. I want to relax.
You know, I really understand exactly what you mean because outside of school, I think I went through a huge period of time where I think I came to understand that I was essentially rebelling against all of the structure I had made for myself, whether it be at school or at work, to the point where anything that wasn't those two things, I just didn't want to do it. Like I was like falling behind on chores, falling behind on like my workout routine, taking care of myself. And it's because I think there was already so much structure that part of me just was like, no, I don't. I like wanted to be the child who was like, I have so much structure. Why do I have to have structure 100% of the day? So I definitely can understand and relate to that. And I think the challenge obviously becomes when you're not growing and you should be growing, and there are things you could be doing, but like for whatever XYZ reason, it's not the top of your priority list, or you're not able to start. Because I feel like that's sometimes the biggest hurdle once you get going, like once I've been to the gym for like a week or two consecutively, it's like, oh, okay, well, I've built the habit. I can just keep going. But that first or second day, it's really hard to get into the gym.
Yeah, definitely motivation is like a big part of it. I don't know, like the motivation and the drive is there, but you sometimes, the moment you pause or take a little break, you lose it. And this happens to me every time. Like, for example, if I go on vacation and I'm the week before vacation, I'm like going out on my workouts, doing everything that I can. But I come back from vacation, I get lazy. I don't want to do anything, right? And the same thing applies with like the personal growth area. Like, I don't know, like sometimes I'm like, oh man, like even right now, actually, with New Year's resolution, I'm like, I'm ready to do everything that I want to do for the new year, right? And January 1st, second hit, chilling on the couch, trying to figure out if I want to, jump it or do it, right? Um, it's definitely tough when you lack on the motivation or just to keep going.
I remember my like fitness coach giving me a lot of advice in this space before, and I even heard it from like a career coach earlier this like last year, was just because it wasn't what you originally planned, it becomes this all or nothing type thing. Where just because you didn't start on January 1st means it's over. Like you're can't start on January 4th. But the reality is you can. But I
Mhm.
think like our brains just stop us. We're like, well, it's not what I wanted to do. It's not New Year's resolution anymore because I didn't start on January 1st, so I'm not going to do it. I think the hardest part comes from just starting. Just start. And sometimes I've found that lately one of the things I wanted to start doing was journaling a little bit more, and I just stopped putting pressure on myself to do it every single day. And I just was like, well, I'm like opening it up the app and I put it on my home screen so I see it right away. And it's like, okay, if I click on it, I open it, I write a couple things, that's good enough. And if I don't open it the next day, that's okay too. I think there's such a push to always have some structure and always be working towards like a goal that sometimes we forget it can be more organic, and maybe you'll even have more fun or even want to do it if it's less pressured too. That's why I actually don't do New Year's resolutions, because I think it kind of sets me up for like a very specific scenario that like I don't need that extra pressure. Like, and obviously, when we go back to work, I'll like be asked, "Oh, what are your New Year's resolutions?" Like, I genuinely don't do any because I like to think that I can set myself something I want to do any time of year. Otherwise, you're putting such a strong emphasis on you can only start new things in the new year, and then you can only and if you don't, you can't start any other time, which seems kind of unreasonable. So yeah, I definitely can. I think just starting is really the hardest part.
Yeah, starting is definitely the hardest, but the most important part to beginning that piece right there.
Have
But
you
yeah, like I
found?
said, pressure.
Yeah, that actually brings up my next question. Have you found that in the whether it's in the professional or even in like the personal side of growth, have you found that having accountability is helpful with growth? So, like maybe in the context of work and professional development, is like having your accountability through like your manager, or having a personal accountability partner in a friend or a partner who's going to keep you accountable for something you've decided to develop in. Have you found that that's helpful for you for growth?
Yeah, I probably say at first I was against that because I'm like, why do you need accountability to achieve something, right? Like, why? But then as I got older, I'm like, man, this is kind of nice. Like, you have someone who's helping you out and trying to achieve the same. Most of the time, we're trying to achieve the same goal at the same time. So it's like pretty nice because you can ask them, or like, you can ask each other questions or push each other to make sure you get that done. Professionally, inside of work and outside of work, it's awesome. I've done that recently with with my colleague Daniel. Actually, we were both very focused on trying to lose a couple pounds, and then just working out, feeling good. He was preparing himself for his wedding, and every day he would actually like text me, make sure I would do my workouts at a special time. He would even ask me, send me a video because he's in New York, right? Send me a video, and I'm like, dude, if it wasn't for you keeping me accountable, I probably wouldn't got those done today. Um, Not saying that you should rely on someone to make sure you accomplish what you need to do for the day or for the week, right? But it kind of sets you to have like that moral support to get to where you want to be. And I think you start learning to kind of take things on your own to be able to do that. Um,
Yeah, that's actually how I felt when I first started my fitness journey. And I needed to go to paid classes. I was doing Orange Theory, I was doing Pilates because, if you don't go, if you don't show up, that's money that's wasted. And like, as a child of immigrants, last thing I'm going to do is waste money. So
yeah.
I will go to the class, even if I'm like running 5 minutes late, like I'm going to go because I paid for it. So that helped me a lot initially. And then when I eventually just came to love the process of working out and how I would feel and, the healthy side of me that was starting to develop more. I didn't need that accountability as much and I stopped doing as many group classes and then I started doing more individual things on my own. And then I just pushed myself to the gym. I've fallen a little bit off, but like I think at one point I was going 5 to 6 times a week on my own accord in my own structure with no like class to it. So I think I can definitely see accountability as like a training wheel to like get you
hmm
started, but then also like if you can be incredibly self-focused, great, but otherwise it can be a good boost to just move in that direction. And sometimes, you know, some people do really well with competition too and like that accountability piece.
The competition is real. Yeah, I think that's what kind of helps me out too is being competitive because it gets you out of that zone of like uncomfortable and hungry to keep going. Um, Definitely, being uncomfortable is what I find the piece to get me going all the time, for sure.
When you're feeling uncomfortable and you're pushing through it, is that how you're identifying that you're growing?
Yes, because I'll give you one example, and this is just based off my career, right? My time at Box, since I was on the team, I joined not really knowing the skill sets of being an IT technician, right? I pretty much learned that all by being uncomfortable. I was exposed to like a variety of different things, new technologies, troubleshooting steps that I've never done before, and being placed in the most uncomfortable situations was the way that I would always like pick up new skills or learn my way to navigating the most difficult scenarios ever. I'd probably say being uncomfortable is like a booster to get out of that area. The moment you're comfortable, I feel like that's when you realize like it's starting to get boring and repetitive,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like what else is out there.
So when you're feeling that kind of like stagnation or that things have kind of gotten monotonous is kind of when you feel like you're not in a growth period anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I started to realize like, man, I'm the repetition of things is like, all right, I've done this every single day. I was fine doing it with no problem, no questions. But the moment where you start to realize frustration of like, is there more outside of this? Because this routine now starts to like become so repetitive. Like, what else is out there? Um,
That's really interesting because I do feel like it can be often where people get stuck in, oh, I'm feeling stagnant. This is feeling kind of repetitive. And honestly not know what to do next or that there's
Hmm.
even something to do next. So how do you even approach when you've realized that? What happens to you that you know that that's happening? Like, are you experiencing specific emotions? Is your body giving you cues? Are people saying things to you? Like, are you snappy or short? And like, how do you then take that like feedback essentially that something is not quite right and decide to actually do something about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I'll be frankly honest, there was a at that point in time in my career when I was on the help desk, when people left the team, kind of had that opportunity to step up from being the most junior technician to now slowly growing into a senior tech. And I was like, oh wow, a lot of more new skills, right? More than just helping people at the help desk area. Now I'm being involved in projects, and I was like, oh, this is a whole new world to me. This is pretty cool. This is pretty awesome, right? But then some of those requests or projects started becoming the same thing every time, or the ask from people were always the same thing, and it was so easy. I like could do it with my eyes closed, right? And I was fine doing it for a long time, where I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool. It's easy. I got this. No worries. I'll take it all. I'll do it all. And then and then you catch yourself with these new emotions of like snappy, you
Mm,
become feisty.
mm,
You're like, "Oh gosh, the same ask again? Like how many more times do I got to do this? Like what else? What else do they want from me? I already did this." And I probably say, yeah, the emotions start getting to you. And for a moment, I was like stuck. I was like, you know, I kind of want to tell my manager that I feel like I hit my peak. But then there was that fear. I feel like fear stops you
mm.
from speaking up or trying to find that growth, right? Because and I probably say fear comes because it's like you don't want to seem like the person who complains, right? Because then now you're like, oh man, am I gonna get more work, or am I gonna get overworked, or what kind of new tasks are gonna come my way? So this is where like I feel like you do want to jump out of being comfortable, but at the same time that fear kicks in, and you're like, oh no, I don't want to be
Ah.
uncomfortable, and then you get stuck, and you're like, I'd rather be snappy, feisty, and cranky, and continue to maybe stay the same. But I don't know. I'll just stick around for a while. And I think the fear is like what holds you back at that point.
So how do you push through that? How did you push through that in that situation?
Man, I think there was a time where the team was asking for feedback or giving peer feedback. And I realized that a lot of my peers were kind of noticing that about me. Like my attitude was changing on things, and like a lot of good feedback came out of that. And I realized like I need to make these changes on my own and just like grow to have that conversation with my manager and see if there was another opportunity to kind of step out of like me doing the same kind of tickets or working on the same request every time. And yeah, I had that conversation. And my manager was like, I've kind of been waiting for you to like ask me to like kind of bring up that conversation of like, what is next in your career? What do you see in growth? And I was like, man, I never really thought about that. um, never put myself in those shoes. And they were like, there's like they start giving you the whole conversation about career paths, and where do you see yourself? And I'm like, huh. I started thinking, I was like, I feel like I don't know what I want to do next until I'm a hands-on person. So I'm like, I want to try different things and see what fit best for me. And at that time, there was a like an internal course on the team of being able to, because IT is so broad, it's so big. There was an opportunity for me to try to learn the skill sets of a systems engineer and work on endpoints and do a lot of like coding and troubleshooting on the systems, but on the back end, right? And I gave that a shot, and I realized, man, I think this is what I want to do. Like, I think this is it.
Yeah.
And I kind of stopped focusing. I asked my manager at the time. I was like, hey, is it okay if I'm like more involved in these projects or these tasks rather than working on these, and kind of step back and work on work more with that team to learn their skill sets and what it takes to be a systems engineer. He was like, yeah, man, like I would be all for like, just definitely don't stop doing your work, but like, whenever there's a project or something like that, I'll make sure to like include you in those conversations. And that's exactly what happened. And because I was hungry and motivated, I actually started booking meetings and one-on-ones with that hiring manager, because I'm like, man, I actually really like this, and I see myself growing into that role. And I was so hungry and motivated, like I really wanted that job. So I was like hustling and grinding in that course that we took with that team. I was always doing my assignments every day to make sure that like, like, hey, I'm your guy. I want to be that person. Um and that whole fear situation that I was facing, I kind of like stopped paying attention to the fear. I think me wanting to like step into something different and getting all excited about it definitely made me forget about the scariness and the fear of it.
I feel like you took something that most people don't realize how much agency and control they may have in a situation, and you manifested the direction that you wanted to go in, and you made sure through your follow through and through your actions that that direction ultimately manifested, and that you got to have the career path that you wanted.
Yeah, the manifestation was definitely strong. Like I was desiring that position every day. Like I was like, man, the moment this opens up, like this needs to be me. um I definitely started putting myself out there more and more, because I wanted it.
Yeah.
Got me
I
excited
think,
again.
I mean, that's a really good example too of like professional development. It kind of made me think where most of growth has happened for me. And I actually, not that there hasn't been really strong professional growth, but I do feel like, at least in the last 2 years, especially, I can say that most of it was personal growth, and there was some residual positive effects that happened in my professional growth as a result of work that I was doing on personal growth. And I think personal growth maybe has these really interesting like ripple effects where, because personal growth is so tied into who you are as an individual, when you grow as an individual, it has positive effects on every aspect of your life, including your career, including your relationships and your friendships. Because I think doing the work in therapy for about, a little over 4 years now, I worked on myself considerably. And especially in the last 2 years, a lot of the insights have been about understanding my values, understanding what triggers me, understanding myself more clearly. And I think that growth was very like subtle and kind of understated, but I think especially since I started school and now kind of entering my second year as a manager, I'm realizing how much of that growth came from understanding myself better because I'm more likely to take a pause when I'm feeling reactive. And that's the best situation for, volatile situations, especially if they
Yeah.
happen in the workplace. But I'm also really thinking through how to develop people and how to mentor people. And it's something I'm very passionate about because I've come to understand how much understanding myself made me a better professional as well. So I'm actually kind of curious, is there something, even though you mentioned most of your development up until now is maybe focused more on your professional life, is there an example you can share of like a personal growth moment that kind of showcases maybe that more kind of subtle and like quiet growth that maybe somebody saw in you in your personal life?
Yeah, I'd probably say very similar to you, Hanisha. Actually, I actually started doing therapy too, because I noticed that I was overworking myself so much to the point where I'm like I started getting like very bad anxiety as to like think as to like what's next.
Yeah.
Seriously, like the what's next was like always killing me.
Yeah.
Um, and I got into this constant loop of like trying to figure out, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going I'm going crazy. I need to go to therapy and speak to someone, not just about like like career wise, but like personal things too, right? And with my therapist, we're like, we basically they navigated me through my feelings, my emotions, and things I needed to work on. And one example is being self-aware of like, of where you're at, you're in your state of mind, being more patient. I started losing my patience like very, very bad with, development and in the workplace and in my personal life, and needing to learn to take a step back and just let things play out on their own was probably a very important thing for me as to patience. Um, I probably say that's something that I started applying now into my own life and in the workplace, and I apply those principles all the time, and not that they kind of, but they actually help me navigate um, on certain assignments or tasks, in a pace where I feel very comfortable. Otherwise, I think I'd be all over the place. But I think that this relates to growth too, because I feel like without those things, um, you might not push yourself as hard. Um, but I feel like pushing yourself hard can also impact you mentally. So it's like I said, take a step back, let things play out, but continue to push yourself at your pace. I think that's been kind of the thing for me.
Yeah, and I think you bring up an interesting point about patience because I think that was probably one of my clues too that something was a little off was that I was losing my patience, mostly with my family. And then I started doing more specific work on that, and like we were doing like family therapy, and came to understand a couple of things there that I hadn't exactly processed from my childhood, and that was ultimately making me snappy and curt. And you know, working on that, and I recently had a chance to see my mom, and realizing that I'm not as snappy anymore and I'm not as reactive anymore, and it's such a relief, honestly, because that means I know I've grown, and maybe even she's grown too at a certain degree, but that it's more important to me what I can control, and that's if my own growth. But I know that I've grown because I reacted very differently in that situation. And I didn't have to worry about losing my patience because I felt pretty regulated. I was well rested. I was ready to kind of be in that situation. And then, even then, I think it was just a very nice interaction. And, my mom is getting older, and it's a relief that I can be there now more, because it's a little bit more comfortable for me to do that. But it started with kind of a lack of patience, and I think that's similar to what happened when I left the help desk, because I also was getting kind of cranky with customers, and it was like, yeah, I was getting a little bit stagnant, and I needed to find the next step to take, essentially. How did you kind of come to realize that it was your patience, and like, how did you work through that in therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say this was a lot of the feedback for sure plays an
Mm,
important factor in. I mean, should be applied. Feedback should be good for you to hear from your friends or your family. Um, just because you want to be a better person, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you, right? You don't want to be known as that person like that's always frustrated or moody, right? So like the moment I started hearing about that, I was like, okay, I need to chat with my therapist about this, and like you said, having that accountability partner, man,
mhm.
that's even your therapist right there. They know exactly they know exactly where you're coming with all those emotions and those feelings, right? So like a lot of that conversation that I share with my therapist, the answers that I got is like, hey, if you're frustrated or you're getting impatient, take a step back. Take a step back, come back to it when you're like more centered, taking a breather. And I mean, I apply that every time now. And when I look at certain situations or I ran across tickets in the past and I like see some of those conversations that I had with people and I just like, man, like I mean, I kept it professional, right? But then it's like, man, I can't believe like, back in the day, this was me. Like, how embarrassing. And I think that's when you realize you're like, man, I've for sure grown um, in all aspects of my career, my feelings, emotions, in my relationship. You're like, looking back, I think it's that look back of when you
Yeah.
realize it. You're like, dang, like I can't believe that was me like 5 years ago. Like crazy. Like, how did I get myself out of that? And that look back is great to know you've grown
That's
for sure.
it's a good point, because I don't know how much I've been doing a lot of assignments for school. I'm doing other things too with like a career coach like mid last year. I don't actually know 100% if I would have realized how much I've grown if I wasn't doing these like assignments and essentially look backs through these assignments on how I've handled certain situations, my own growth, what are my values, and how are they impacting my relationships and my experiences now. And I think even when I look at professional development, more often than not, I've been told from like other leaders in the organization, like, oh wow, like we're planning really well this year, and we're doing a much better job than we have in the past. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like my bar is so high and my perspective is too close that I don't have enough to remember, like, oh, yeah, this is actually quite a lot of growth that the organization has gone through, and we are planning better. But, it's a combination of my own high expectations that I have and navigating those, whether it's of myself or others, combined with a lack of perspective on looking back and realizing how far I've come. And I think I saw something on Instagram that I thought was really interesting, especially with the timing of the end of the year and the new year. I guess there's a lot of couples who do like a kind of a year look back, essentially, with their partner. And they kind of look back on their memories over the last year, and they kind of plan the next year, whether it's like, vacations or like things they need support on, but they kind of do it as like a partnership with them, and then partners sit down and like essentially look, whether it's budgeting, whatever it may be. But it kind of made me think like, oh yeah, like there's a lot that we lose perspective of unless we have these ceremonies or other kind of like rituals and events that we intentionally look back with to realize our progress.
Yeah, that's crazy. you know, that's something I was actually thinking of too. It's like you post something on Instagram like 10 years ago, and then now you pull it up and you look at it and you're like, man, I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. Like, I'm so glad I don't dress like that. And you just feel like it's like it brings like a good feeling because you like outgrown yourself, right? But then you celebrate it in that way that you're saying, like a ceremonial way, right? So yeah, it's a
Is
pretty interesting
Do
take.
you ever kind of get a moment where you see that growth and you kind of like, oh, you've outgrown that person? Has there ever been a moment where that growth actually feels like loss?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, yeah. um, I probably say like, we're constantly like maturing, growing up as actual adults, right? Um, and then you realize it. I don't know, like I feel like some of the things that you learned just easily like get brushed off like your mind, and you forget, right? You just place yourself in, like I said, in an uncomfortable situation, and you don't realize how to act or navigate through things, and then you realize, man, I forgot what I learned. Sometimes that does happen. I probably say it can. It's hard not to. As humans, we're gonna encounter that naturally. We start developing all these new emotions. Like I said, I didn't realize I would suffer at some point from anxiety, and it takes a difficult situation to bring that out of you. Um, and I think that's when you learn that there's things in life that can happen and change you, and sometimes you have no control of that. But then it's up to you to take the action to get the help that you need, or like to speak to someone to get out of it.
That's actually incredibly well put. And it reminds me that when I think for me, my growth that felt like loss was probably when I fully understood what had happened to me as a child. And I think it was a moment of growth because I'm learning something, but it was also a loss because I had to process incredibly complicated emotions about what I really went through and grieve essentially loss of a childhood that I didn't get to have. And so that kind of it was, two things can be true at the same time. I can have experienced growth, but I also can grieve losing something which was essentially, I guess, ignorance that this had even happened and it was a big deal. Um, and then I think it like reaffirms that what you were just mentioning that, you know, once you know about something about yourself, in my case, it was started out with anxiety and then I also have PTSD. Once I know these things about me, it is my responsibility to go and address it and make sure that I'm taking care of myself and that I'm not letting that spill out into the people around me in my professional or personal life. And I think that is a responsibility. Like once you know, like you can have the ignorance up until then, but once you know about something that is like unique to yourself, not necessarily it doesn't have to be a diagnosis or an acronym, but just knowing that you really, you know, hate this or they hate that, like it's your responsibility to like, okay, well, what am I going to do with that? And does it impact other people if I'm like that? Like some people really hate taking meetings in the morning. Okay, but we do have international company and we do have to take early meetings. So what are you going to do about it now to make sure you
Yeah.
address that? And I think following through is that is the growth. Like, okay, I've identified something. I'm going to make sure that it doesn't impact those around me in a negative way because that's my thing to deal with. And like following through, I feel like that is definitely growth.
Yeah, that is for sure like finding yourself and stepping out, right? I definitely agree with you on that
Yeah.
one.
I know maybe haven't touched as much on your childhood, but I'm kind of curious to understand, even if it wasn't phrased as growth per se, but like, what did you have to experience as a child that kind of forced you to grow, or maybe even adapt was maybe the word we used back then more so?
Yeah, I'd probably say for me, um, I'd probably say for me, man, this is kind of like a hard one for me always because I don't want it to just be about money hungry, right? I feel like seeing my mom as a housekeeper and my dad working graveyard shifts and coming home very late and me still going to school and they're like, oh, like, make sure you do really good in school and we'll continue to provide the foods and the meals, right? And just like, I don't know, I look back now and I'm like, man, like, I can't believe, like, my mom was probably working minimum wage at the time, working at hotels, and her motivation and her hunger, like, to make money and bring food to the table. And then I look at that now, I'm like, man, like, how did they even buy me clothes or shoes? Like, they had to push through things, right? In their life, what was growth to my parents? Did they even have that opportunity to like develop themselves? Because like I feel like that's what I was saying. Like I feel like growth is a very open thing. Like there can be many ways to grow. Like as a person, emotions, career wise. Like I feel like my mom basically became like a very strong woman and grew into providing for my siblings and myself and then my dad too. Like, and it's crazy. Like I think that's what gets me hungry to like keep pushing through in my career. Um, like there was a time in my life where I wasn't in tech. I was like working regular jobs, right? And the moment I got out of that and stepped into the tech world, I always look back like, man, I don't want to go back into that. Like, I wanna keep climbing. Like, I want to be successful. I wanna pay my parents back what they did for me, and
Hmm.
I think that's what keeps me pushing all the time. Is like finding that motivation to not go back to where we were at back then,
Mm.
and being able to being able to provide is what what fuels me from my childhood. I think definitely chasing the American dream. I think the American dream is something that we all as immigrant kids try to help our parents accomplish, right? Um, they always bring it up. They're like, "Oh, we came to America for a reason,
Yeah,
for the
I hear
dream,"
that too. Yeah.
and it's something that never gets dropped. And I always hear it, and it's like, "This is the land where you accomplish things." And you're like, "Okay, what do we accomplish? Let's get this," you know? Yeah.
Do you think that in the journey of growth that you've had to also learn growth in terms of being kind to yourself in the sense of like, you know, forgiving yourself for maybe how you may have acted or forgiving yourself for doubting yourself even? um have you had to readjust from a growth perspective, like how you believe in and support yourself as like you're as an individual, like, and that growth journey, that in terms of yeah, okay, like I may not know how to do this, but I'm not going to beat myself up. Or, you know, an imposter syndrome, like, is this the right room? Like, do I deserve to be here? Have you experienced growth in that perspective?
For sure. I think failure definitely takes a toll on you.
Hmm.
Just failing in certain things, like a test, an exam, or probably say interview opportunities at places where like you want to work at, right? And there's a rejection. I feel like sometimes that can impact you into like feeling like you didn't make it. Rejection. I'd probably say rejection is could be something tough on you, especially like coming from like kids of immigrants. If you don't do good at something and you fail in something, I'd probably say like, in our culture is probably like, oh man, you're not good at this. Like,
Yeah.
why do you want to keep trying? If you're not good at it, move on, find something else, find another job, right? Just keep working hard, get that paycheck, and that's it. Um, and I probably say now, in my career or from what I've learned with the growth mindset that I have now, it's like if you fail at something, it's all right. Like it's all right. Like there's always going to be an opportunity to kind of retake that exam or step out of that position and find another job, right? It'll be all right. Like there's always the next opportunity. And if you realize it when you step back and look at that, you're like, all right, I'm not giving up. It's not really failure. I'm actually letting life play itself out. And the moment you realize that, it's like, wow, like, man, the person I was 5, 6 years ago probably would have just gave up and just let that be.
Or
Now,
spiraled.
or spiral, yeah, yeah, because like I said, anxiety will eat you up, and you just go in a circle, right? Um, but now, as I definitely have grown a lot, and if I ever face rejection, I don't I don't let it bother me. I'm like, all right, it happened. There's always going to be an opportunity that comes up, and I will take it. And I now have the motivation and the hunger. Like if it's something that I really like and I really want to be, or where I want to be, I will manifest that to get to that level, right? Um, yeah, I'd probably say that's where I stand with that.
You mentioned an interesting phrase, and I know where it comes from, but the growth mindset, and I really love that phrasing. I think maybe in the modern like vernacular, it can often be mistaken as hustle culture, and it is very different. I think having a growth mindset can be done in a responsible way where you're not kind of in the grind, constantly hustling, because I think in the midst of trying to pursue a growth mindset, and maybe if there is overlap with hustle culture in terms of just the American way, I think it's also important to balance that out with like self-care and rest and making sure that, you know, you are your best, your emotions are at their best, so that you can then go and do your growth mindset in the best possible like state. Do you kind of relate to that as well?
Yeah, I definitely could relate, because you could definitely get lost in the sauce for sure. um, you I can actually attest to that because when I was trying to prove myself that because I was coming from being a contractor slash intern to trying to get like a full-time position opportunity at my job. And I was like, I think I was putting so many hours so that I can prove myself and who I was as a person. I didn't, like I said, I didn't want to go back to what I was doing before. And I really wanted to like stay at the company where I was at. I was like, man, I love this place. I want to like continue to grow here. Right. So I was putting in crazy hours. I was always overworking myself on requests, and my manager would tell me, "Oh, you're doing great. Like, you don't need to like work these crazy hours. Like, it's okay. Like, we know you're a great employee. You've done so much for us. Like, you're okay." But I feel for me, I felt like, man, that's not enough. Like, I need to prove everyone that I'm like rocking it. Like like I'm the best. I'm the best. And you just get lost. You get lost, and you overwork yourself so much that like I feel like at that point people are like, all right, Rolando's got it. We don't got to worry about him. Like, he'll take it on. He'll continue to do great. And you're like, man, but you find yourself getting burnt out at some point,
Because it
and that,
snowballs. Like everyone just keeps coming to you with more and more things.
yeah, and I don't know, like at some point that burnout now starts to get in the way of your career. You start to fall into repetition because you're used to being that same person that you used to be, right? um and then you fall into that area, that space of like, man, dude, am I happy? like like is this good for me, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I think the feedback of what people see from the outside on your work ethic or your personality helps you, because you're like, all right, man, like man, I didn't know I was behaving or acting that way. And you kind of learn to slow down because you can still get the same amount of work done. You can still do 100% on the things that you're really good at by slowing down. Like, the work's still gonna be there the next day,
Yeah, no,
and
it is.
you're still the same person at the end of the day. You don't need to prove yourself. Like, I mean, like, proving yourself for what? You're just a regular employee, but you're still showing up and you're doing everything at a slower pace. You're still doing great. But one thing that I realized was that once I got converted and became full time and moved up into like different position of my career, that like, why do you need to prove yourself? There's no competition, and overworking yourself are just gonna make you fail at some point in your career. It's not worth it. And yeah, I learned that with therapy too. Like, stepping back, it's like, it's all right. Like, tomorrow will be another day, and you will still get the same thing done. You
Yeah.
don't have to do it the same day.
Yeah. And
Um,
like, you know, hopefully, and this is where having like good leadership matters a lot, is like, having a supportive environment where you can be authentic and just say like you are feeling burnt out and that you need to kind of slow down a little bit, and that it's it is very easy to get wrapped up in like, yeah, I'll just do it all, but then yeah, who's asking for it all to be done? Like, do you have to do it all? And I had to find myself asking those same questions too, because there was that, you know, life is work type of mentality, and work is life. Like that's kind of where my first 5+ years was in the company, and then slowly shifted away from that. But it's not end all be all, and there is a next day, and it can get done the next day. Or helping, and honestly asking other people for help is a huge part of it too. I wasn't really good about doing that or delegating, and I became a lot better about doing that, especially as a leader. Very important to learn to delegate. And I think all those things just got a little easier to do.
yeah, it gets easier, I think, for sure. As like when you have good managers, like even now, like I have great managers all around. Like, they always realize like when you have a lot on your plate, and they're like, man, like, slow down.
The gut
And
check, right? It's another piece of
yeah,
accountability.
that accountability. I feel like accountability, when it naturally kicks in, I feel like that's the best feeling. Um, because it's a quick reality check, right? You're stepping back, letting things play out. You're getting the help that you need, get a learning lesson out of it, grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're at the top of the hour and we kind of took it all over from personal growth to professional growth. So I'll ask you the question and then feel free to bounce it back to me. But what is at the root of growth? I'm going to say that again. What is at the root of growth for you?
Um, I guess for me, growth has been less about speed and more about awareness, knowing when I'm learning and when I'm stuck and when I where I need to pause. Um, and just I feel like I said before to you, Anisha, growth can be many things, but it's up to you to find that motivation, that drive, and put that in place in your career, personal, um, but always continue to find yourself. I think that's key. Continue to find yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think at the root of growth for me would probably be probably discomfort. And I say that with hindsight because I think more often than not, I haven't realized that my moments of discomfort were moments of or opportunities to grow. And so I think whenever I feel discomfort now, I actually do a gut check. I'm like, oh, okay, is there something I'm supposed to learn from this moment that I could be applying? And it could be as simple as just speaking up for myself because I feel like I'm being ignored. Or it could be as simple as like, oh yeah, like I do want to buy that ice cream. Uh, because I also want to make sure I'm being kind and I don't always like have to be restricting myself from certain food. Small things like that. So I think at the root of growth is discomfort.
That's awesome. And I like that too. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Rolando. I really appreciate you chatting with us and kind of diving into growth a little bit. For our audience listening, if you enjoyed this conversation and would like Rolando back, please leave a comment on what you would like us to chat about. And Rolando, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Anisha. It's been a pleasure and appreciate you having me. Thank you.